And then bears
you have
different fruits.
and bears different fruits. You have to take whatever it bears for
Now
you.
this is where I differ sufficiently with you, but I like your train of thoughts. But let's place your thoughts on X-ray and see if it survives the heat of the machine of that X-ray. Our founding fathers, when we got independence in 1960, they were very honest about their differences. They did not lie about the fact that this is not one homogeneous country. What did they do? They first of all, they sat down and agreed how the country should be run. And they agreed that there should not be a powerful federal government, because there will never be a time when the people of this land will reason alike. And so what they did was they created a loose system. So we had the northern region, we had the western region, and then we had the eastern region, northern, western, eastern region. And that is why when people talk, they say Nigeria sits on a tripod, a pot with 3 legs, right? This is what they meant. This is what they mean, rather. This is what they mean. And that is why it's also in our history books. We teach our little children, we all learnt it. So they looked at this, this map of Nigeria, and they said, okay, let this country run around 3 major ethnic groups. They knew we had 500 and something ethnic groups.
Yeah.
But they said, okay, when you come to this northern region, you have more of the Hausas. Even though craftily and deceptively, Hausa Fulani came in. I don't know what Hausa, there is nothing like Hausa Fulani, it is Hausa, northern Nigeria. And then the western, they looked at, there are other tribes, but the dominant tribe are the Yorubas. So they say Yoruba. And then they looked at the eastern region. There are other tribes. There are the Ijaws, there are the Bibio, there are the Efik, and everything. But the Igbo happened to be the unifying. So they said, let us run along this. Now, what did they do? What did they do? They ensured that these 3 regions had leaders. We had regional leaders. But then there was also a federal government. But what was the federal government's job? It was to ensure that we stayed together. All right? So, things like defense, the military, printing of the notes, and, our territorial, and all of that. The responsibility. But these regions were allowed to function independently, raise their resources, decide what to do with it, and simply pay royalties
to federal government.
Is there anywhere in this world you can locate this idea these men had? Yes. It is in the United States of America. So, what I've just explained to you is how America is run. And what is the evidence of the thinking of these men? It is that at that point, every region was developing. I attended University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And we are told, everybody knows it, that that institution was built with money from palm kernel of the eastern region. Obafemi Awolowo University was built with money from cocoa. The West had, they had all these economic trees. That was what they were doing, and they were making money, and they were developing, they were building infrastructure. These men built infrastructure, built roads, built hospitals, built schools. Awolowo offered free education to the Yoruba, to the region, because he was Governor General. And what do you see the Yoruba doing today? The Yoruba, when it comes to Ndegura, you can't beat them. When it comes to commercial, you can't beat those guys. We go to London, you see them, you see them. These are products of Awolowo's free education. Free education he was running, not with oil money. Nigeria had not discovered oil when these men were running the affairs of the regions. Then you go to the north, it was agriculture. The granite pyramid is this epitome of the agriculture, but it was agriculture. Food, those guys were producing, and then we are feeding the whole, something that continues to today. They farm and they send trucks to all over the country, and that was how they were making their money, farming rice, farming everything, farming cotton, you know, and all of that. And industries, the industries at the level of that time were built. Industries at the level of that time were built in the West. You come to the East, it was industrialization. The Igbo man, that was where the Igbo man got, you know, people talk about the ingenuity of the Igbo man. It's not this thing we are doing, importing from China now. The Igbo man was known to be ingenious. They built local factories in the Southeast. Aba was production hub. Onitsha, there was production going on in Onitsha. Go on and on. And when they talk about the Michael Operas of this world, these men did great during their time. With all of their shortcomings, what these men knew was that the destiny of our people should not be left in the hands of the federal government.
And that's why we are suffering.
Let us not forget that that arrangement ran until 1966. Whose history I don't want to go into now, but it was in 1966 that we saw the first disruption of the dream of these guys. January 15, 1966, and we've never remained the same ever since. It was in 1966 that that system this men set in place, that arrangement, that agreement this men had in place was altered, and then we had this unitary system imposed by the military. But then, when the civilians came back, they saw how sweet it was to run, you know, to sit
from
down and
center.
Control oil was discovered, and these men, and nobody wants to give up that, right? The point I want to make is this. Those men, with all the corruption, with all the tribalism, which I agree existed. I'm not saying it didn't exist. No. With the tribalism, with the that existed, that they ran. We look, and those were the glory days. These men ran an economy with their little knowledge that had the naira stronger than the dollar. These men ran a country that was globally competitive. These men ran a system that provided education for her children, provided healthcare for her children, provided jobs for her children. These men, these founding fathers we are talking about, brought electricity, pipe-borne water. They knew that this is where we exist to provide all of these things to our people, right? And they did it. These men knew at that time that, okay, we have this population. We don't need to be importing these cars. Let us get these companies, sign MOU with them, come set up your factories. They knew all of that. Now, the problem I have is, what we are discussing is said by somebody who governed Nigeria at a point when technology was cheap. When Nigerian children out of government, who government have not invested in, have spent their time, spent their resources, spent their energy, and gained knowledge in IT. And he couldn't exploit the talent of the children of his country to industrialize this country, to move this country forward. This is a man who convened a national conference in 1914.
1914, no, 2014.
2014, sorry.
1914 amalgamation.
No, look at that, made me fair. You know, who in 2014, and part of the resolution
could not implement it
is resolutions that will take us back to a functional country. He did not have the moral courage. Even when he lost election and he had nothing to lose, he did not have the moral courage to implement it. Because one of their recommendations was, let's go back to regionalism. So he has no moral rights. And that is the only reason why I blame him. But just to say this, This also stems from, not because of him, but this just stems out of my own personal conviction before today.